The second half of the 2017 FF1M Championship kicks off at the Hungarian Grand Prix. The Hungaroring, a circuit located in the Mogyrod region of the capital, Budapest. And it's been an interesting championship so far, which is currently being led by Finn Väinö Kimmonen for the Tornado. Although he hasn't had a good couple of races in Spielberg and Silverstone. Spielberg, he retired on the very first lap after contact with the first GRM of Bottas, off into the gravel and then rejoining unsafely into the other GRM of Sergio Perez. At Silverstone, he suffered an engine failure, and that led Romain Grosjean to take up advantage and pick up the pieces for what seemed a routine win, but it wasn't a done deal because Kevin Magnussen from 14th on the grid had an absolute blinder to challenge for the win in the closing stages. He enjoyed a good battle with his teammate Caterina Caracciola mid-stages, but maybe the time loss actually cost him the victory, who knows. Finishing third in that British Grand Prix was Lewis Hamilton. Another podium for him in front of his home crowd, and I did ask the question, has he won his home race? Yes is the answer to that. He won the 2009 British Grand Prix as part of his championship winning campaign with Shake and Bake. Here's a look at the Hungaroring, and we're using the pre-2003 layout, post-1988 layout, so quite a fun little circuit like a go-kart track, full of long corners, such as the long turn 1 hill/PK corner and then turn 2, and then up to turn 5, the highest point of the circuit, before a series of S-bends, and then a tricky final sector. You've got turn 11 at a lacy corner where you see a lot of incidents, and then turn 12 can be a bit tricky as well, but generally drivers enjoy this circuit. Lewis Hamilton enjoyed it last season, having taken victory. It was quite a convincing win for himself and Mitchell. As part of his championship winning campaign with the Somerset-based team, we are expecting a mixture of 2 or 3 pit stops in this 76 lap race, so it should be interesting to see what drivers take going into the race. First practice was topped by the FJR of Kevin Magnussen. He did that last season as well. Fernando Alonso took to the fore in Saturday practice, but we got a first-time pole sitter in the form of Caterina Caracciola. That's her first career pole position, alongside is Fernando Alonso in the Shake and Bake. The gap between those two was 1.5 tenths. Then it's championship leader Väinö Kimmonen third in the Tornado, ahead of championship contender Lewis Hamilton fourth in the Mitchell. Romain Grosjean will start 5th in the other Tornado, another championship contender, and Nolan Bryant doing quite well, up in 6th place in the other Shake and Bake. And then Sebastian Vettel, although he's still wearing Pedersen colours, he is in fact a Mitchell driver, and alongside Vettel is James Clark in the AJ. Then it's an all Andrew row 5, Jean-Eric Verne ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. And then moving on to row number 6, we got the Friday practice topper Kevin Magnussen ahead of Sergio Perez in the GRM, 12th. And then we got Nico Hülkenberg, 13th, leading an all-go Jero row 7. Alessandro Farina, having quite a good season, is the only driver to have finished every race this season. Quite an impressive feat for your debut season. Valtteri Bottas will be starting 15th in the second GRM, ahead of Cooper Lee, now in Pedersen car. Then it's Thomas Gonzalez, the highest of the CBA racings. Not good qualifying for the CBA racing this time around. Kubica starts 18th. Rumours that hits could be his last race. He's rumoured to be under threat from Mattia Alfonsi, who could get a drive for the next race at Hockenheim. As for the rest of the field, it's Carlos Sainz 19th, Max Verstappen 20th, and then the back row filled by Kimi Räikkönen and Stoffel van Dorn. Yeah, not a good qualifying for CBA racing at all, but let's see what the race brings. All but 2 drivers were on the soft tyres for Saturday. The only 2 that weren't were Nolan Bryant and Kevin Magnussen. So Bryant's 6th on the grid, more impressive than it first appears. And let's see what tyres everyone's picked for the race. Väinö Kimmonen has topped the Sunday warm-up, and he'll be racing on the medium tyres. And we're just awaiting the start of the race. Here we go. Caterina Caracciola on the left, her debut pole position, and FJR's second of the season. Magnussen had a pole at Monaco earlier on. To the right is Fernando Alonso, and 5 lights go out. Very, very slow launch there from Caracciola, but And Alonso getting alongside and already moved past into the first corner. And Alonso takes the lead. Now, is there going to be some sort of incident further back? I think it's all gone cleanly so far. And further back, we've got Hamilton who's jumped Väinö Kymmenen for third, going into the first corner. So Kymmenen obviously boxed in behind the slow starting Caracciola, has meant that Hamilton has jumped up to third. That could be key in the championship battle. And you can see already Caracciola holding up the field quite noticeably, I have to say. Makes me wonder if Caracciola did go qualifying heavy. Well, I can confirm that I did actually focus on qualifying for Caracciola, a bit more general focused for Kevin Magnussen, which is why he qualified down in 11th place. Look at that queue of cars. This is going to be a long afternoon for Caracciola, although she is on a two-stop strategy. She's got quite a lot of fuel on board, the FJR, that having to keep her position in check going into the penultimate corner, which I'm not sure I have a name for, with this final corner. Again, I'm not sure if I have a name for it, but Alonso scampering away up the front. What is the gap between Alonso and it's going to be Lewis Hamilton now at second place, having overtaken Caracciola into the first corner. And now next on the hit list, Väinö Kymmenen looking to move back up into third place. But the bad news for him, Hamilton is 2 places ahead of the Finn. But it looks like Kymmenen's quite heavily fueled as well, because it looked like pretty much identical fuel loads between Caracciola and Kymmenen as we now go through Irvine Corner. Now into the Nannini chicane. And further back, what can we see? Well, Magnussen's had a bit of a poor start from 11th down to 13th. And then further back, Kimi Räikkönen's also had a poor start because he's dropped behind Räikkönen. That's a good move from Max Verstappen up the inside of... Who is that? Is that Cooper Lee? I think Lee's got an issue. I think that's why Max Verstappen managed to make the move stick going into there. So Lee dropping back. We may see him in the pits or pulled over to the side of the road. Through the final corner, and it looks as if Kymmenen is shaping up for a move on Caracciola down the main straight. If FJR did do a bit of Sunday warm-up setup, then it's not working out too well for Caracciola because she's just lost third place to Väinö Kymmenen, and the Grosjean has just taken 5th off of Nolan Bryant. Bryant actually got ahead of Grosjean at the start of the race, but now Grosjean out, off goes Caracciola. That spin for her as well, not quite. Just about hanging on to that one. You can see the FJR on the hard Goodyear tyres. In fact, most taking mediums for this race. Alonso, Caracciola, Bryant, Magnussen, Sainz, Verstappen, Van Dorn and Lee all taking hard tyres for this race. It's obviously the mediums and softs were used by those drivers in Saturday and Friday, and then there'll be a mixture between the rest running softs and hards on Friday and Saturday. Shake and Bake have decided to use softs a little bit more in Friday practice. In fact, they must have used it for Nolan Bryant, or whoever ran in first practice. Now Bryant, speaking of which, overtaken Caracciola for 5th place down the main straight. Bryant actually heavily fueled, so that is quite an impressive manoeuvre from the Californian from San Francisco, is Nolan Bryant. Now Sebastian Vettel, he's going to have a look at Caracciola for 6th place, who's just plummeting down the order. And FJR might not have turned the engine up quite as much, which may hinder the straight line speed quite a bit as well. And running wide at the first apex of the Nannini chicane goes Caracciola, now through the Baumgartner S's, left then right, then another left before a lacy corner. And Vettel shaping up for a move on Caracciola, who's slipped back a lot on Nolan Bryant. Heavy fuel load, not an ideal race setup, and not much airs being run on the FJR. Let's see what happens further back. I mean, well, I'm just having a look at Cooper Lee. He's still in 21st place, so I don't think he did actually pit at the end of that lap, so I don't know what on earth was going on with Cooper Lee on the early stages when he lost position to Verstappen and Van Dorn. But Lee obviously struggling as Sebastian Vettel overtakes the struggling Caracciola for 6th place. Now who's next? Jean-Eric Vergne next to challenge Caracciola for 7th place now. And there's an AJ in the mix as well. James Clark in 9th place. Dropped a place on the start of the race. Fastest driver on the circuit is Roman Grosjean in 4th place now, looking to catch up to Väinö Kymmenen, who himself is catching up to Lewis Hamilton for 2nd place. So the Tornadoes once again showing very well in the race, as they have done pretty much all season. I wonder how they've done it. Maybe they've just kept developing the aerodynamics of the car and then utilising this setup on Saturday and Sunday to get the best out of the car on race day, because that's where the points are won. No pole positions yet for Tornado this season. Most of the pole positions have gone to Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, and then another couple for FJR, Magnussen and Caracciola. That's up the inside into the first corner, Kymmenen versus Hamilton. These two, they didn't collide actually, but yeah, Kymmenen collided with Bottas in Spielberg. That's where I must have got that from. Vergne overtaking Caracciola for 7th place now down the main straight. And Caracciola is actually one of the slowest on this circuit at the moment. So definitely struggling in race trim, and looking at the gaps, 2 seconds a lap slower. So yeah, definitely too qualifying heavy. Learn that lesson for next time. Through the Baumgartner S's goes Väinö Kymmenen, now up to 2nd place, and let's see what he can do to catch up to Fernando Alonso, who we're looking at here. This is a CBA Racing for Kimi Räikkönen, running wide at Furman/Massa corner and having a spin, and losing a place to Cooper Lee. There is the Australian going through the exit of the Baumgartner S's, now through a Lacey corner. That was a twitch through there, off the circuit, nudging the barrier and spinning, but no wheels lost, so he can rejoin. And Lewis Hamilton has blown an engine! Lewis Hamilton's championship challenge has taken a bit of a hit right there. Smoky Mugen. And through up to 3rd place goes Roman Grosjean. So now we've got both Tornadoes in the top 3. Not leading the race though, that is Fernando Alonso, but Väinö Kymmenen, the fastest driver on the circuit on that last lap, so he's definitely catching up to the shake and bake in front of him. As we watch Lewis Hamilton's engine continue to napalm itself and finally pulling off the circuit. So that will move drivers behind up positions. Nolan Bryant up to 4th, Sebastian Vettel up to 5th, Jean-Eric Vergne up to 6th, James Clark now 7th, having overtaken Caracciola somewhere, and could be getting AJ scoring points for the first time this season. He could have done that in Austria, but a few mistakes on what was a very, very slippery track that race meant that he couldn't manage it. But he's up in 7th, and if AJ do score points, then all 11 teams will have scored points off the circuit. Who is that? That was Nolan Bryant off the circuit and has dropped down to 5th behind Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel now driving for the Mitchell team. Can he do something about the 3 in front of him? Not catching them up at the moment, so but that'll be useful points if he can stay there. Sergio Perez overtaking Caracciola, continuing to plummet down the order. And now Caracciola has got a Gajera behind. That will be... off the track goes Caracciola, so... rejoining fairly unsafely into the path of Kubica. And oh no! Well, that's another one for Stoffel Vandoorne. Once again, Judd did say that the issue was down to a faulty set of crystal balls and tarot cards. Obviously they need a refund on those because Stoffel Vandoorne has suffered yet another mechanical retirement, and that was definitely an engine failure. And side-by-side action, that's Bryant versus Vergne at Hill PK Corner. Take your pick between those two because both of those drivers did legendary moves going into that very first corner. Let's go PK, the original move. As now we go through turn number 4, that's Massa/Furman corner. Again, take your pick. And that's confirmation of Stoffel Vandoorne, the luckless Stoffel Vandoorne retiring from the race. So through the Nannini chicane goes, and Nico Hülkenberg's crashed out. Or is this a collision? Well, it's Kevin Magnussen having a look at his former teammate, and off the track, as lonesome goes Hülkenberg, and just understeering into the barrier, and there goes a wheel. That was a careless one for Hülkenberg. I wonder if Gajera are planning to get rid of him at some point, because Hülkenberg's not been particularly good this season. Had the good race in Austria, up to 5th, and took the driver of the day accolade, but has generally just been outshone by Alessandro Farina virtually all season. So Hulkenberg's stock going down quite a bit there, but that moved Magnussen up into 10th place, and he's lapping quite well, the 5th fastest on the circuit. The four fastest on the circuit on that previous lap, as Jean-Eric Vergne continues to try and put the pressure on Nolan Bryant for 5th place. Vergne could be 3-stopping. I'm not sure if his fuel gauge... Last season we did see the fuel consumption be very low, and if the pattern repeats itself for this, then Vergne could be coming into the pits in the next few laps. So he does need to get ahead of Bryant. And we've switched back to Caracciola. Is this going to be another mistake for the Swiss driver going through Massa corner? Yes, indeed it is. And, oh goodness me, spinning and damaging the car. I think it was Farina that clattered into the struggling Swiss. Yes, indeed it was, as into the pits comes Farina. So yeah, Caracciola really struggling with that car at the moment. And Farina will probably struggle to score points, so bad day for Gajera. Moving the first pit stop forward though, taking on a few laps of fuel, so that should take the Italian to about lap 36, I think. Maybe a little bit earlier, depending on how low the fuel goes. And Caracciola, I think, switching to a 3-stop strategy now to try and salvage anything. Literally anything, but right now you're in last place, Cat. So just a bit of testing, maybe a bit of development for Judd. And the Goodyear tyres, in fact. Those are Firestones on board the Andrew as we look at Nolan Bryant going way off the circuit. No way was he going to survive that one. And actually nearly taking out James Clark in the process. So Bryant, big accident out of the race. This should be a bit scary to watch. Looking at James Clark and... oh, goodness me. Very fortunate to avoid being a part of Bryant's accident there. So, a Lacey corner claiming a victim. Nearly claimed Cooper Lee. Has claimed Nolan Bryant. And which one are we looking at? That's Perez versus Ricciardo for 7th place. So Sergio Perez on the move. Getting past, well, nearly getting past Daniel Ricciardo. Got 2 medium-tired runners. Perez on Goodyears and Ricciardo on Firestones. And still running side by side. That was through Mansell corner. They better not battle too much because Kevin Magnussen is lurking up to these two. But Perez takes that 7th place, and that has put Magnussen into play. As into the pits comes Roman Grosjean. That's a 3-stop strategy right there for the Tornado driver. So he needs to make this count if he's going to remain in 3rd place. He's going to rejoin, well, that's 5th at the moment. Trundling down the pit lane at 80 kilometres an hour. Now it's 6th. Is it going to be 7th? No, it's not. So he rejoins in 6th, and he's got some good clear track in front of him. But he needs to continue to push on his medium Firestones if he's going to challenge Kimmonen or Fernando Alonso, or both. But I think Kimmonen is on a 2-stop strategy, so it's going to be tricky for the Frenchman. As out of the pits comes Max Verstappen, also 3-stopping. And rejoining 17th. Verstappen scoring points in both Spielberg and Silverstone, so Willow's starting to get their season back together. Quite slow in the early stage of the race as they were running their 17 car and developing it, and their engine's not the best either, but they're sticking with Judd for next season. And joining Judd next season will be CBA Racing. They have defected from Megatron and will be switching to FJR's engine. A few other bit of news as well, with 2 more teams coming in. Monolith will be running Hart engines, and I think Tilsley will be running Hart as well. Galaxy will be moving to Megatron engines alongside Shake and Bake and GRM. Mugen have lost a manufacturer, but they have retained Mitchell, and Andrew have retained Climax for next season as well. We look at Fernando Alonso leading the race, and 2 stopping by the looks of it. But he has now got Väinö Kimmonen right behind him, so in race trim, it looks as if the Tornado has the measure over the Shake and Bake. Starting lap 19 goes Fernando Alonso looking for another victory, Kimmonen looking for another finish. matched Sebastian Vettel's record of 9 consecutive podiums. Vettel set that record in the 2007 season when he was driving for Dark Wolf, and it was the first 9 races actually, before a 4th place ruined that. In Kymmönen's case, he got 9 consecutive podiums starting from, it was the race after Suzuka, it was Bahrain, and that streak lasted until Canada this season. Then that collision with Bottas ended that streak, and now Kymmönen's got to do that all over again. We got yellow flags. It's at the Nannini chicane and Baumgartner S's, so who has gone off or pulled over with a mechanical issue? Well, here the 2 Pedersens, it's Lee and somebody else, and Lee pressured into that off and smashing out of the race. Cooper Lee having switched from Mitchell to Pedersen. His switch has been inauspicious so far. And by switch I mean swap with Sebastian Vettel. And you see a twitch at the first part and then just understeering off the circuit, wallop into the wall. That won't do his stock much good, or his chances at a race seat for next season. Confirmation out of the race as Fernando Alonso maintaining a 0.6 of a second lead of Väinö Kymmönen going into Hill Piquet corner. And how's Sebastian Vettel doing? Well, Alonso was slightly faster than Kymmönen on that lap, but I suspect Kymmönen is being held up by the Spaniard. Vettel 17 seconds behind, but Grosjean the fastest, it seems. Yep, that's confirmation. Grosjean is the fastest driver on the circuit at the moment on his new Firestone medium tyres. Now just a second behind Sebastian Vettel in the Mitchell. And further back, Magnussen has moved into the top 8 and is challenging Daniel Ricciardo for 7th place. We switch to the battle for 3rd, Vettel versus Grosjean. This is for track position, and these 2 drivers do have 2 more stops to make, so it is a legitimate battle, even if Grosjean is on much fresher tyres. Further back down the order, Clark's now moved up to 5th, so he's having a very good drive, and certainly a candidate for driver of the day if he can stay there. I'd certainly award that to him if he gets his first career points. But we'll have to see how the rest of the race goes. We've seen a few offs, we could see a few more come the end of the race. Sergio Perez up to 6th place, from 12th on the grid, that's pretty good. As out the final corner, Romain Grosjean challenging Sebastian Vettel for 3rd place. Into the first corner, late on the brakes, and Grosjean takes 3rd. Now he needs to set off after the top 2. He's gained quite a lot of time on them already, so once Alonso, Kymmönen make their pit stops, Grosjean should take the lead. But with an extra stop to make compared to these 2, he's got some work to do. As crossing the line, Kymmönen looks a lot closer this time. Alonso just keeping the middle ground going into Piquet corner. Underneath the Cannon Bridge into Hamilton corner, the long left of turn number 2. And then another British driver taking the name for turn 3, Mansell. That corner used to be a tight chicane when the circuit was first built because they discovered an underground river and they had to divert the circuit. That was used for the first 3 seasons before reverting to the layout which we're currently on right now. Through the Baumgartner S's. Alonso in the lead, Kymmönen second. The gap was just a quarter of a second as they crossed the line. Alonso got the measure over Kymmönen on this lap as we approach Inouye corner. The tricky right with a bit of a left in there. And now the final 2 hairpins, and that looked like... Who was that approaching them? That can't have been Grosjean. It must be... That's a lapped... It's a lapped somebody coming up to them. Is it Valtteri Bottas? I think it should be Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, it looked like a GRM if it was the white and blue colour scheme. So somewhere along the lines, Bottas has gone a lap down on the 2 leaders. Maybe he's made a pit stop. And using a nice bit of slipstream there was Väinö Kymmönen, now through Irvine corner. And now the highest part of the circuit. You can see some pylons in the distance. And then some trees as we go into the S's once again. and Grosjean was quite a bit quicker on that previous lap. And we got a pit call. Fernando Alonso coming into the pits at the end of this lap. Now, lap 23, it's a bit early for a two-stop strategy, although I would be expecting it to be a two-stop strategy. As through and taking the lead, but that is because Fernando Alonso is making a pit stop. Kymmenen now leads the race. Now, he needs a good set of in-laps if he's going to do something about this, but Sebastian Vettel is not that far behind, although Vettel should be coming into the pit soon as well. There's a comfortable distance between Kymmenen and Clark, so that's not a problem. So it's a fight between the top three drivers, Fernando Alonso, Kymmenen and Grosjean. I think Vettel probably should be safe in fourth, and look at the fuel load, that's a two-stop strategy. Confirmed for Fernando Alonso. So he's got a bit of work to do if he's going to make this two-stop count. I'll be interested to see the lap time difference between Grosjean and Alonso in this second/middle stint of the race for those two drivers, as Kymmenen responding more or less immediately to the Alonso pit stop by coming into the pits at the end of this lap, and he's got that GRM crawling over his gearbox, and that must be Valtteri Bottas on brand new tyres. So that won't do Kymmenen's. Well, that'll have unsettled him a little bit, but into the pits comes Kymmenen for his first of probably two pit stops into his pit box. Up on the jacks, fuel gauge, 31 laps, two-stop strategy for the Finn. I'd quite like to see a Kymmenen, Raikkonen and Bottas podium, because that will make it 3 Finns on the podium. We do like a Finnish driver. We'd had a few other pit stops happening. Sebastian Vettel had made a pit stop and fell to 6th, but he'll regain that 4th place once Perez and Magnussen make their first pit stops. Neither of them pitting just yet. And we've got Thomas Gonzalez up into 7th very briefly before he made his pit stop and rejoins 13th in between Sainz and Bottas as the two AJs go into combat against each other, Clark versus Kubica. Now it's shown as Kubica's already pitted. Where's Kubica come from in this race? Where did he start? He started 18th on the grid, so that's been an impressive drive from Robert Kubica. Maybe Clark went a bit too qualifying heavy on his setup, and that's helped Kubica come into play. And Kubica's only just come into the pits as well, so yeah, two-stop strategy for the Polish driver, even if his seat is under threat. And Verstappen, Ricciardo, Magnussen. Yeah, we've got a right mixture of drivers in this running different strategies, because Verstappen has managed to get himself into 9th place ahead of Ricciardo and Magnussen. I wonder if Verstappen's on a 3-stop strategy and he used new tyres, or maybe his race setup is pretty good. We'll have to check his fuel load. But Ricciardo right in between a rock and a hard place. Verstappen and Magnussen are both two very, very feisty drivers. Ricciardo will probably want to get away from them, so he's going to have a look at Verstappen into the first corner, and Verstappen defended that one, but Ricciardo was braver on the brakes, and he has taken 9th place off of the Willows driver. And Grosjean's second stint not going particularly well, because Fernando Alonso is catching up to the Frenchman. So Grosjean's 3-stop strategy not exactly paying off, and if he's not careful, then he may actually lose 4th place to Sebastian Vettel. That's going to be an interesting one. So Grosjean's second set of tyres not working as well as he'd hoped. And Alonso did in fact remain ahead of Väinö Kymmenen during that first round of pit stops as well, and I think Alonso is going to be pitting first between himself and Kymmenen as well. So with Grosjean starting to slip back in terms of tyre performance, here comes Fernando Alonso now side by side through Piquet corner. Underneath that cannon bridge, now still side by side. How long is this battle going to last, and how quickly will Väinö Kymmenen catch up to these two now through turn 3 Mansell corner? I think Alonso got the best drive out of there, and is he going to take the lead into Massa corner or Furman corner? Yes, he is. Fernando Alonso retaking the lead of the race in that 2-stopping shake and bake on the hard Firestone tyres. Now the two Tornadoes are back together, and Kimmonen needs to get past Grosjean very quickly because there's the race leader starting to get away from them. And I'm trying to see what's happened a bit further back. Kubica's now dropped that down to 8th, so has he made a mistake on a lap somewhere that has dropped him back behind Clark and Perez? Because we saw Kubica challenging Clark and getting ahead earlier on, so we'll have to have another check at that. Yeah, Kubica not particularly quick at the moment. As we continue to watch the two Tornadoes, Kimmonen now at the inside of Grosjean, who's not really defending his position, but not making that one difficult at all for Kimmonen, so could be a little instruction there. Has gone out to Grosjean, don't hold up Kimmonen. Kimmonen is challenging for the win. That'll make Grosjean's heart sink. As we look at the AJ, looking at which one is it? James Clark versus Jean-Eric Vergne for 5th, and Clark moving up to 5th now, although a little bit slow on the exit of Piquet corner, now through Hamilton Bend and now through Mansell. I think Vergne's going to hold on to that one for now. And that happened pretty much at the same time as the Tornado swap. But Clark, I think, is going to get another chance, so maybe his qualifying setup maybe his race setup wasn't so bad after all. Certainly not as bad as Caracciolla's, who just came into the pits for a second pit stop. Alessandro Farina also coming into the pits, and it was those two that had their little conflab earlier on when Caracciola spun at Furman Corner and then was collected by Farina. And they're running right at the back, 16th and 17th. Here's Clark's second opportunity coming up. He needs to get a good run out of the final corner. And that looks pretty good to me. Now, how good is the Heart compared to the Climax? Well, the Climax in the back of the Andrew defending into the first corner, but look at that, running a bit too wide was Vergne, and is Clark going to get it this time? Well, you can see Perez lurking up to these two, still side by side through Hamilton Bend, and now back into the 3 kink. Again, I think Vergne's going to hang on to that one, and Clark better be careful, because here comes Sergio Perez. But Clark, oh, that's brave round turn 4, he's got him. Clark now moving up to 5th place, and, well, he's probably looking quite good for that 5th place, if he can pull away from Vergne and Perez, as we go through the Nannini chicane. Both AJs in the points, that could be a good little windfall for them. That would certainly move them up to 9th ahead of Willows and Pedersen if it stays like that. Sainz in 13th place in the second Pedersen. Sainz has been, let's say it, very dreadful this season, just not quick at all. Probably a legacy of entering FF1M a little bit too soon, I think. But anyway, and Verstappen has an issue because he's just come into the pits. Pretty close to his second pit stop anyway, so no biggie, but hopefully he's not lost too much time. So this, in effect, will be his second pit stop of the race, and 7.7 seconds. 23 laps now on board the Willows. That'll probably take him to lap 55, I think. And the battle for the lead resumed between Alonso and Kimmonen. And Kimmonen needs to get ahead pretty quickly because I'm pretty sure that Alonso is going to pit first and then Kimmonen shortly afterwards. So if Alonso needs to stay ahead for as long as possible in order to be in with a chance of victory. Otherwise it is going to go the way of Väinö Kimmonen. And Kimmonen looks to be quite impatient right up the back of the Shake and Bakes 6. That's turn 13 that we've just gone through. Still need a name for the final 2 corners. But here's the slipstream. Can Kimmonen do something about Alonso down the main straight? And Alonso defending quite aggressively, but Kimmonen, he's got an issue! Kimmonen has an issue right at the start of that lap, at the worst possible point for the Finn, and he's going to have to treat his car with a lot of mechanical sympathy if he's going to make it back into the pits. Through Mansell Corner. This is perilous. This is perilous for Väinö Kimmonen. It's an electrical problem as indicated on his steering wheel. And through Nannini. exiting Nannini, still in second at the moment, but now he's just lost that second, and he's about to lose, well, he's about to be unlapped by what looks like Kimi Räikkönen in the CBA. And he's doing a good job of holding up the CBA racing, now through Inui corner. And I think Kimmonen is going to make it back into the pits, but that surely is his chance of victory soiled. That's a painful one. The good news for him, though, is that Lewis Hamilton is out of the race also. The two bits of bad news is that the other two expected championship contenders are first and second. So that's just put the ball right into Fernando Alonso's court, because Grosjean, on that three-stop strategy, is going to be coming into the pits very soon. So he's going to relinquish... He may actually relinquish track position to Sebastian Vettel, and that certainly won't do Grosjean's race much good. And Kimmonen's had to switch to a three-stop strategy. That was much too early to be going to the end of the race on that set of tyres and fuel load. And Kimmonen rejoins fourth. He may still have a podium on the horizon. And on the next lap, Roman Grosjean coming into the pits. Now, this is the key one for Roman. He needs to put in a demon pit stop and try and rejoin ahead of Sebastian Vettel if he's going to make his third set of tyres count. Up onto the jacks. Yep, definitely three-stopping, because there's just 23 laps of fuel going on board the Tornado. 5.8 seconds, that was a quick stop as well. Where is Sebastian Vettel? There's Sebastian Vettel, he's got Kimmonen right behind him. Grosjean has just jumped Vettel, that is a key one for Roman. He may still have an outside shot of victory if he pushes like a hell in the final two stints. So the battle for the win is still on, and the battle for fifth is on as well. Clark versus Perez for fifth and sixth. Keep an eye out on that position if that changes anytime soon. Kubica coming into the pits. That was a bit early. I'm wondering actually if the AJ swap was Clark getting ahead of Kubica. That's possible. Anyway, on board with Väinö Kimmonen as he looks to take back third place off of Sebastian Vettel. In fact, not quite as far back from Sebastian Vettel as I thought, actually. So, yeah, it's not worked out disastrously for Kimmonen, but... Oh, goodness. Oh, contact between Clark and Perez going through a hill corner. Well, Perez getting his elbows out to move up into fifth place. And Kimmonen's going to have to get his elbows out if he's going to get ahead of Sebastian Vettel in a hurry. Through the final corner, sponsored by Vodafone. And right up the back of Mitchell is the Tornado of Väinö Kimmonen. He's got a good run, and he's surely going to outbrake him into the first corner. There he goes. Kimmonen back up to third, and Grosjean second is about 5 seconds ahead. As we have a look at an Andrew Racing, looking at the back of one of the CBAs. It's Verne versus Gonzalez, and spinning goes Jean-Eric Verne because he ran a bit too wide, and reversing back onto the circuit. That was a very quick manoeuvre. Now, Ricciardo versus Magnussen into a PK corner. That's a battle that's going to be resolved either quickly or upside down. And there's Gonzalez sandwiching, well, looking at both of them. He's got a good seat. Got a good view of these two. And Ricciardo, I thought he was going to run a bit wide there. Looked as if he'd missed the apex at Furman Corner. But he hangs on to 7th place at the moment. Magnussen in the points from 11th on the grid. So, trying to rescue something from what looked like a promising first practice session, but hadn't worked out quite as well as he'd hoped in qualifying. Through Inui corner, and he'll have to wait until the main straight to challenge Ricciardo. Magnussen needs to drill one right at the inside because Ricciardo looks as if he wants to keep 7th place. Let's see what happens this time around. The Judd running the crunch setting on their ears and looking to try and get right at the inside, but Ricciardo running a bit too wide at the apex, and Ricciardo dropping down to 8th place behind Magnussen. Now Magnussen needs to push hard. He can do on his hard tyres. Fewer errors on those, theoretically. As we look at Gonzalez now challenging Ricciardo. Gonzalez on the verge of points. This will be a good effort if he can get points from 17th on the grid up the inside into the first corner, and that looked a lot simpler than Magnussen's a few laps ago. So both Andrews now out of the points. Ricciardo and Verne having some issues of their own. Ricciardo not quick in this stage, and Verne having that spin, that quick little spin at a Lacey bend. Now Verne is looking to try and pile on the pressure on his own teammate. And behind Verne is Robert Kubica. Verne and Kubica 3-stopping, and both look to be the quicker driver compared to Ricciardo at this stage. And Ricciardo, I believe, is a race winner at this circuit. I think he won the 2012 race when he was driving for Tornado. I think Grosjean got seconds then, and Pastor Maldonado took third for Willows. So it's a circuit that Ricciardo has had success on. Doesn't look as if he'll get much success in this race, as he is now out of the points and being challenged by some 3-stoppers. Ricciardo might get back ahead once he makes his second pit stop and use some good outlaps to gain track position. And look at this. Kubica getting a good view of Verne having a strong look at Ricciardo into the first corner. Further up, by the way, both Tornadoes are catching back up to Alonso. Grosjean was 12.6 at the end of the previous lap. What is it? 9.8! Wow, Grosjean is really charging at this stage. And Kimmonen, and he's dragging Kimmonen with him as well, so both Tornadoes suddenly back in the game. And Kubica through the Nannini chicane. Ricciardo missed the first apex, and he'll be under pressure once again going through the Baumgartner S's, but there's no way of overtaking at that stage of the circuit. Have to wait until turn 1 once again. That seems to be the main / only overtaking opportunity on this circuit. Maybe you could throw one down the inside of Furman Bend, or take advantage of a mistake like Verne almost did just then. And now Ricciardo's going to be under some serious pressure down the main straight. He's got his teammate and Kubica all over the gearbox, and Ricciardo's not defending this one. Verne up the inside, later on the brakes, and Verne takes 9th place. Now he needs to set off after Gonzalez if he's going to score some points. As we shift to that very battle, actually. Gonzalez now under pressure for that final point by Jean-Eric Verne. And this is a replay, so it must have happened already, and this must be how it happened. Despite Megatron's natural grunt, Verne has got the much fresher tyres and the better grip going into the first corner, and Verne taking that 8th place. Now his next target, Kevin Magnussen. Ricciardo still struggling, it seems, as he goes through the Baumgartner S's. He's now down to 11th place, going through a Lacey bend. That's a bit too quick into there, and spin, and just nudging the tyre barrier, but no damage done, so should be able to rejoin from that. That's slightly half-hearted rejoin. Now we switch to race leader Fernando Alonso, due into the pits this lap, and this is a timely pit stop because both Tornadoes now within 10 seconds of the shake and bake. As Alonso's making his pit stop first, this is the time to push hard and then use the new grip from these new tyres to extend that gap, because the undercut does look quite powerful on this circuit. Vettel in a comfortable 4th place, so that position looks to be set for the German, the 2-time champion. But there's still 26 or so laps to go, so hopefully for Vettel's sake he won't have a reliability issue, just like his teammate Lewis Hamilton much earlier in the race. Hamilton, the very first retirement of the race, in fact. As Fernando Alonso comes into his pit box, puts on a new set of Firestones, and the pit stop lasting 8.4 seconds. Not a particularly quick stop, but the undercut is so good that he should be able to maintain the lead after this. once Kinnunen and Grosjean make their final pit stops. And Grosjean lapping very quickly now. He's 6 seconds ahead of Väinö Kinnunen. Kinnunen will be pitting first, so maybe he could use his new Firestones to put in a good set of outlaps and get the jump on his teammate. As Kevin Magnussen comes into the pits, he was running 7th, and this will be his second and final pit stop. If he can put in a good set of outlaps, he should be able to maintain 7th, but Jean-Eric Vergne is a particularly threatening driver on his 3-stop strategy, so he'll have the much fresher tyres come the end of the race. 7.9 seconds was the stop for Kevin Magnussen, half a second quicker than Fernando Alonso's, and Magnussen rejoining 12th, confirmed as he goes through the first corner. And how much clear track has he got? Well, Ricciardo is behind him, not close. Lovely bit of clear track for Kevin Magnussen. Kimi Räikkönen has a bit of clear track, but he's going to waste that by smashing himself into the barrier and out of the race. That's one of the CBAs gone. And look at that wheel bouncing back onto the circuit. Is anybody going to collect that? I don't think so. As Kevin Magnussen catch up to Sainz for 11th place and looking to try and make the move almost immediately. Much later on the brakes thanks to his new tyres, and that is 11th place gained for the moment, but it should be 7th once the final pit stops are made. And Kinnunen hasn't made his final pit stop just yet. He was a little bit quicker than Grosjean on that previous lap. As into the pits comes Thomas Gonzalez for his final pit stop. I suppose his challenge is with Kevin Magnussen, but because Magnussen pitted first, he should be able to... Gonzalez should be behind the Dane once Gonzalez exits the pits, but Gonzalez has the newer tyres by 2 or 3 laps. So we could be seeing a battle between those two come the end of the race. As out comes Gonzalez in 8.1 seconds. Obviously enough fuel to go to the end of the race. Gonzalez looking for his first podium since Road America, where he got a 3rd place. And he's just taken Carlos Sainz for 10th place going through the first corner. And now we've got the 2 AJs going at it. I think Kubica's got one more pit stop to make. And he's going to get ahead of Robert Kubica for 7th into the first corner. And looking to immediately get ahead of Jean-Eric Vergne for 6th place as Vergne locks up going into Hamilton corner. And now Clark up the inside, he's got him. That was grip right there, and probably all the tyres for Jean-Eric Vergne. Vergne, is he on the mediums? Yes, he's on the mediums, so they're wearing out a bit quicker than he would have hoped. Thomas Gonzalez, having taken Sainz for 10th place, is going to run wide, very, very wide at Furman corner, and he's going to spin. And how quickly can he rejoin? According to the map, he's rejoined 11th behind Carlos Sainz. He's got to overtake him all over again. Väinö Kinnunen making his final pit stop. This is 3rd pit stop because one of them was unscheduled, an electrical issue. Nothing but a new steering wheel will fix that though. And he'll rejoin in 3rd, quite comfortably. Vettel's not crossed the start-finish line yet, so this is where Kinnunen needs to push. He's only just rejoined behind Fernando Alonso, so no he's not. He's rejoined that was behind one of the GRMs. Getting a bit excited there, as now Roman Grosjean comes into the pits for his final pit stop, the lap after his teammates. Now where is Roman Grosjean going to rejoin? Because Kinnunen, he was only 4 seconds behind Grosjean when he made his final pit stop. And his pit stop needs to be good. 7 seconds, it's decent. But where is Väinö Kinnunen? He was right behind that lapped GRM. Kinnunen just crossed the start-finish line there. Is he going to rejoin ahead of Roman Grosjean? He is! I think Väinö Kinnunen has just put in an absolute belter of an outlap, and he's now in that 2nd place. So Grosjean's going to be scratching his head at that one. I'm expecting some angry radio as Kinnunen right ahead of that lapped Andrew is that, I think it's Ricciardo, as Jean-Eric Vergne now moves up into 8th place. Vergne having now made his final pit stop, and he is back into the points ahead of Thomas Gonzalez. Now, Magnussen is 7th, but he has got Jean-Eric Vergne now chasing him for that 7th place. As through the final corner, this is Fernando Alonso. The gap between himself and Väinö Kymmenen is just 2.4 seconds. There is Kymmenen. He is catching up to him, hunting him down like Jaws. Tornadoes on the 3-stop strategy. Kymmenen's accidental, Grosjean's intentional, and Alonso on the 2-stop strategy, now starting to suffer a little bit on the older tyres. Pitted relatively early compared to the split between his 2 stops. So yeah, he's definitely going to struggle a little bit, but he's going to do his best to try and hang on to that race win. There's an FJR about to be lapped. I think it's Caracciolo about to be lapped for the 2nd time this race. As through the Baumgartner S's. No, it's actually Kevin Magnussen, so Kevin Magnussen quite a way ahead of Jean-Eric Vergne at this point. Unless I've got that wrong. No, it is Kevin Magnussen, so Kevin Magnussen fairly comfortably in 7th place at the moment. 10 laps to go. But it might be... It's 9 laps to go for Magnussen here, but it's 8 laps to go for Alonso and Kymmenen, who is now just 1 second behind Fernando Alonso. Here comes Väinö Kymmenen, and Roman Grosjean 5.6 seconds behind these two. So if Alonso and Kymmenen start scrapping away, then Roman Grosjean could be sitting pretty to catch up and maybe do something about these two. And Sebastian Vettel still in 4th place. How far behind Alonso is Vettel? Not crossed the line just yet. 31 seconds off of the race leader Alonso, and comfortably 31 seconds behind. How far ahead of Perez is Sebastian Vettel? Perez not even crossed the line yet, so yeah, Vettel just enjoying his drive on his own. Alonso in a moment won't be enjoying the defence that he's going to have to put on if he's going to win for the 3rd time, or is it the 2nd time this season? I think it's the 2nd time this season. Having won at Monaco earlier this season. Partially helped by Bryant crashing out at Casino, and then a small delay was enough to put, I think it was Väinö Kymmenen behind Kevin Magnussen, I believe, after Kymmenen's 2nd pit stop. And that ultimately cost Kymmenen the race win. So he's out for some form of revenge, and he's just half a second behind as they cross that line, and Grosjean's catching the pair of them very quickly as well. We could be having a 3-way battle for the win. A grandstand finish at the Hungaroring is incoming. Further back, Sergio Perez is in 5th place, which is a good drive from 12th on the grid. James Clark currently running 6th, Kevin Magnussen 7th, Jean-Eric Vergne in 8th. So I wonder who I'd be awarding Driver of the Day to if it remains like this. I'd be tempted by James Clark because he's yet to score points in his FF1M career. Perez has had a decent drive to get from 12th up to 5th in the GRM. Yeah, between those two, I think. There's still 7 laps to go. 6 laps to go, actually, and the gap's just 1/4 of a second between Alonso and Kymmenen, and Alonso is having to defend a little bit going into Piquet corner. And nowhere to overtake for the rest of the lap, pretty much, so Kymmenen's going to have to wait until the 5 laps to go board comes out. Or maybe pressure Alonso into a mistake at this corner, which Alonso doesn't do, because he has got nearly 300 races worth of experience. It's his 300th race coming up very soon. Not 100% sure when exactly, but it could be Monza or it could be Portimao. And there's an FJR coming into the mix. He's about to be lapped, Kevin Magnussen, through a lacy bend. And Magnussen's going to have to get out of the way pretty quickly because these two are right together and they won't want any lap traffic influencing the battle. Well, Alonso certainly won't. Kimmonen wouldn't give a rat's ass if Magnussen gets in the way of Alonso. Just as long as Magnussen doesn't get in the way of Väinö Kimmonen. Now, how good is the slipstream? It's less than 2/10 and Väinö Kimmonen having a look into the first corner, but not quite close enough to make the outbraking manoeuvre. Alonso's going to hang on for another few corners, probably another lap, and Grosjean just 4.2 seconds behind, and didn't catch up as much on that previous lap, so Grosjean needs a bigger push if he's going to challenge these two for the race win. We're going to stick with these two, unsurprisingly, because this is the important battle on the circuit at the moment. And still Magnussen ahead of these two, not quite getting out of the way. I suspect he will do on the main straight. Through a lacy bend. Don't be fooled by that FJR in front, it is not leading the race. It is the one in the middle that is leading the race, but for how much longer? We may find out in 2 more corners' time. As rounding the final corner goes Alonso and Kimmonen, and Magnussen was quite a bit ahead. I think Alonso is going to be in trouble into the first corner. Väinö Kimmonen, here he goes up the inside, and Alonso is going to have to admit defeat on that one. Kimmonen with a bold move up the inside to take the lead with just 4 laps to go. And he looks on course for his 3rd win of the season. Where has he won previously? Aragon and at Road America. Those are his 2 victories so far this season. Can make it 3rd if he stays where he is. Now he's got Kevin Magnussen to deal with. And he certainly will give a rat's ass now. Now where's Grosjean? He's 3.4 seconds behind. He was behind Kimmonen as they started that lap. So Alonso may be in a little bit more trouble, as he may lose 2nd place if Grosjean puts on an absolute spurt in the final few laps. Yeah, Kevin Magnussen is definitely not getting out of the way. He's not making this easy at all for Väinö Kimmonen. Going down the main straight now, surely Magnussen will just lift off a bit. There he goes. Kimmonen now puts that lap on Kevin Magnussen. And Grosjean 2.6 seconds behind Fernando Alonso. So that battle may come to a head in the final lap, but needs a bit more, does Grosjean. I'm not sure if he can manage it, because on the final lap now is Väinö Kimmonen, rounding PK corner, and Alonso finally putting that lap on Kevin Magnussen. And that's just the breathing space he needed to hold on to that 2nd place, because Grosjean is not exactly close. I mean, he has been closing, but not by enough. Through Irvine corner goes Kimmonen, and definitely looking on course for his 3rd win of the season. Once again, Tornadoes acing their race setup. And for Kimmonen, actually, this is more impressive than his previous 2 wins, I'd say, because Aragon dominated that one once he took the lead after his first pit stop. Road America, well, it was a good challenge against Fernando Alonso, and in this one, a slightly better challenge against Fernando Alonso, compromised by an unscheduled pit stop, but he's overcome that brilliantly, because out of the final corner to take his 3rd win of the season and extend his lead in the championship is Väinö Kimmonen for the Tornado Climax. Confirmation of the race result, and Fernando Alonso does split the 2 Tornadoes. So Fernando Alonso doing his championship challenge, a bit of good, certainly ahead of Grosjean, but Väinö Kimmonen's extension of his championship lead certainly isn't enough for Alonso. And the rest of the results, Sebastian Vettel taking a well-earned 4th after the season he's had with an underpowered, under-competitive Pedersen. Now he's with Mitchell and did quite well there. Sergio Perez taking 5th for GRM, good drive. Also good drive James Clark in the AJ for his 1st career points, well deserved. And rounding out the top 8, Kevin Magnussen in the FJR and Jean-Eric Vergne in the Andrew Racing. just missing out on points was Thomas Gonzalez and Robert Kubica in what could be his last FF1M race this season. And further back you can see 4 drivers crashing out of the race: Hulkenberg, Bryant, Lee and Raikkonen, and 2 others suffering engine failures, Stoffel van Dorn and, much more significantly, Lewis Hamilton. Suffering the very, very early engine failure, who knows where he could have finished in this race if that Mugen hadn't have blown up. And pole sitter Caterina Caracciola finished last out of the remaining runners. Not a great way to celebrate your first pole, but oh well. So Väinö Kymmenen now has a 12-point lead in the championship, but now over his teammate Roman Grosjean, moving up to second ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who remains on 54 points. Fernando Alonso, fairly comfortable in 4th, and is only 25 points behind Väinö Kymmenen, but it's going to be a bit of an ask to win the championship from there because Tornadoes are very quick and very, very reliable. And they have a 59-point lead over Mitchell in the championship. Shake and Bake holding 3rd, they actually take 3rd over Andrew Racing. And FJR holding on to 5th, fairly comfortably ahead of GRM. And AJ with James Clark's result, moving them up to 9th ahead of Willows and Pedersen. So, there's going to be a bit of a break between this and the next race at Hockenheim. We'll in fact be having a mid-season test, and that will be taking place at Zandvoort. So, unless we don't get coverage for that, we shall see you at the next race at Hockenheim.